Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished speakers and honored participants, good morning and a warm welcome to our online virtual seminar titled Bangladesh in Crisis, Human Rights, Justice and Future of Democracy. Thank you all for joining us today, December 10th, on this pivotal occasion of World Human Rights Day. I'm Arifa Rahman Ruma, honored to serve as your moderator today. Bangladesh is currently navigating an exceptionally turbulent and painful period. Over the last several months, we have witnessed widespread human rights violations, systematic attacks on democratic institutions, and a growing environment of fear and impunity. This seminar brings together global experts to analyze the crisis and explore paths toward accountability, justice, and democratic restoration. To begin our program, we will start with a short documentary titled Bangladesh at Crossroads. Let us now watch the documentary Bangladesh at Crossroads.
How Dr. Yunus assured the world and the nation of reform scheme where inclusivity and equality, let alone fundamental human rights, would be upheld. All these tall claims were made during a speech by Yunus on August 8th upon his return to Bangladesh before taking oath as interim head without winning any election. And from UN to other international rights bodies also backed Yunus' regime and the quest for so-called reform process unanimously. International human rights activists, organizations, politicians, lawyers, journalists raised their concern from the very beginning, but Yunus's interim government didn't pay attention to this concern.
Given the current instability in Bangladesh and since the departure of the former Prime Minister in August, this is a moment of deep concern. Many governments are condemning the violence and calling for peace and law and order to be restored.
But 7 months under the rain, a reality check reveals just the opposite scenario, with law and order when totally collapsed, while the judiciary and law enforcement have been totally weaponized. Mob rule has become the rule, with lynching, communal violence, alongside other acts of terror like arson, looting, rape, curb on freedom of movement for women and girls roiled the nation. Let's take a look at how rights abuses exacerbated in the country, extrajudicial killing and custodial death by law enforcement. Since August 5th, at the behest of Bangladesh Army, joint forces have been deployed. Troops are also empowered with magistracy power and following our monthly status of killing under law enforcement. Atrocities against minorities.
We have a responsibility because we enable Bangladesh to be free and independent. Now, whatever the change of government has been in Bangladesh, it cannot be acceptable that religious minorities are persecuted in this way.
Attacks on followers of Sufis and shrines. Islamists inciting violence against minorities, in stark contrast to government's narrative on ruling out communal line over attacks against minorities. BBC journalist laid bare how Islamists, released after August 5th, are inciting ongoing spate of violence, targeting all minority communities including Hindus. 2 episodes in BBC radio service brings to light the stark involvement of Islamists in fomenting attacks against minorities. Yunus's sweeping indemnity for mass killing of cops, citizens, and violent attacks on police stations by loyalists. In contrast to the pledge to ensure justice, an order issued on October 14, 2024 by Yunus reads, "Students and citizens who put forth all efforts to make this uprising successful will not face prosecution, arrest, or harassment for their acts between July 15th and August 8th. Emboldened at the indemnity, advocates of Yunus regime, radical Islamists and coordinators from student against discrimination platforms publicly glorified the killing spree of cops and planned destruction of key public offices as part of a violent campaign to bring down Awami League."
আপনাদের কাছে যে মেসেজ আছে, আমরা পুলিশকে মেরেছি।
যদি মেট্রো রেলে আগুন না দেওয়া হতো, যদি পুলিশদেরকে না মারা হতো, তাহলে বিপ্লবটা এত সহজেই অর্জিত হতো না। কিংবা
পুলিশের ফায়ারিং এ কম লাগছে, সিভিলিয়ান প্লেসে হাতে 7.62 আপনারা নিজে দেখছেন।
বৈষম্য বিরোধী আন্দোলনে সিরাজগঞ্জের এনায়েতপুরে যদি 15 জন পুলিশ নিহত না হতো, বাংলাদেশের পুলিশের মেরুদণ্ড ভাঙত না।
Despite such public admission of killing, the decree justifying no legal action against violence perpetrated by supporters of Yunus has been likened by rights activists as an act of widespread indemnity granted for perpetrators who killed police, minorities, citizens affiliated with Awami League, aimed to bring Yunus in power and solidify his grip on power. No justice for killing of at least 318 people under Yunus regime. Ayin O Shalish Kendro, a leading human rights organization, reported. Massacre of Awami League activists. At least 171 citizens were reportedly killed in form of lynching, arson, and other forms of violence. According to accounts of family members, tens of thousands of party activists and leaders in almost each unit of 4,573 union in all the 64 districts across the country subjected to physical attacks, and their houses and business were looted and vandalized. Hundreds of activists are feared, killed as their whereabouts are unknown for months. Due to impunity for killing of Awami League leaders and activists, there has been no let-up in the extrajudicial killing spree even after 6 months. Rather, the cycle of vengeance and erosion of rights only compounded. Violence against women. Safety of female population, from clothing to workplace and movement, under siege and culture of impunity reigns supreme. Death of freedom of press. The claim of Dr. Yunus to uphold freedom of press emerged out as biggest hoax in 6 months, as not only journalists are suppressed with meticulous design of false lawsuits, arbitrary arrests, unlawful incarceration, but also a record number of headquarters of media outlets came under attacks. Since August 5th, offices of at least 19 media outlets are torched and vandalized, highest since the country's history, according to DW Bangla Service. Mass arrests and arbitrary detention, brutal crackdown. At least 13,540 people were subjected to mass arrests and arbitrary detention from August 2024 till January 2025. In 20 days of February, at least 12,500 were detained in political cases. No justice in court. Victims of mass arrests denied of legal rights. Reports reveal critics of Yunus regime, who have been subjected to mass arrests, were attacked inside court premises on a regular basis. Denial of academic rights of students. Over the space of last 6 months, tens of thousands of students who are opposed to Yunus and his allies were attacked inside campuses, even barred from attending examinations, denied of academic rights, and their certificates have been cancelled by university authorities. Only because of political belief or alignment with Awami League's student wing, scores of students were murdered, abducted from their home, and even thrown behind the bars. Now the questions over Yunus gaining undue privileges to expand business empire.
Now, to formally open today's seminar, I'd like to invite Professor Dr. Muhammad Habib Millat, President of the Global Center for Democratic Governance, to deliver his introductory remarks. Professor Millat, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Arifa. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. On behalf of Global Center of Democratic Governance, I extend my warm welcome to you all. Today is World Human Rights Day. This day is observed annually on 10 December to commemorate the adoption of the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights by the United Nations in 1948 and reaffirms the universal commitment to human dignity, justice, equality, and fundamental freedoms. The Global Center for Democratic Governance is a Canada-based research-oriented think or tank organization established in Bangladeshi diaspora living around the world. Maintaining a neutral position, the organization is actively raises its voice against human rights violation, particularly those occurring in Bangladesh. Today's seminar is a part of that ongoing effort. In the context of Bangladesh under the interim government, this seminar reports serves as an introductory reference to recently reported human rights concerns. These include allegation of political repression, violation of freedom of expression and peaceful assembly, attack on journalists, minority persecution, deterioration of law and order, interference with the judicial system, and impediments to rule of law. This seminar aimed to initiate constructive dialogue, encourage objective assessment, and emphasize the need for accountability, transparency, and the protection of human rights in accordance with the constitutional principle and international human rights standard. This seminar is expected to reach at an audience of more than 750,000 viewers globally. So now I will give a short presentation now on human rights violation in Bangladesh under the interim government. As you see that at least 637 individually have been killed in a mob lynching incident from August 24 to July 25. 64 individuals have been suspected to extrajudicial killing while in the custody of law enforcement authority or agencies. And 32 political detainees affiliated with Awami League have been died in prison custody. At least 213 leaders, that's documented and verified, 239 leaders and activists of the Awami League and its affiliated organization have been murdered. At least 300, this is the official figure, 359,000 people have been arrested. Majority of them are Awami League or supporters. And 124 members of parliament, including 15 women parliament, have been illegally detained. Detained, and they are not getting bail at all. They are not only attacking the people or Awami League supporters, they are destroying the symbol of spiritual, cultural, and historical symbols. Over 185 shrines have been demolished by the Islamic fundamentalists. About 1,400 monuments and sculpture related to our pride, independence were destroyed, demolished. That includes Bangabandhu Museum, which is the birthplace of independence, was demolished using bulldozers in presence of military and law enforcement authority. But law enforcement authority were not spared. 44 police officers, 1 BGB officers, and 2 answers officers have been killed during this tenure. 182 police personnel are currently missing. This number has been published by the interim government. More than 500 police stations have been attacked, vandalized, or set on fire. Approximately 6,000 firearms and more than 600,000 bullets have been robbed. There are also dramatic increase in women and children's abuses. 397 children were raped, 325 children were murdered, and 839 were abused from January to September 25 over 9 months. 12,726 cases violence against women and over 4,000 rape cases were reported from September to June 25. Women's rights and freedoms are being seriously undermined. Minority persecution was very common after that 4th or 5th of August. Evidence confirmed 2,442 incidents of minority persecution between August 24 to June 25. 30 minority people were killed, including 3 indigenous people. 20 minority women were raped, and 17 churches were set on fire on the Christmas Day 2024. 130 incidents of human rights violation are documented in Chittagong hill trucks. 49 were arbitrarily arrested, and at least 300 acres of land was seized. Nobody is spared. At least 396 LGBTQI plus individuals were harassed, victimized across 70 documented incidents. Democratic process, because of the undemocratic and unelected government, the ruling interim attempted to legitimate their power by showing a fake resignation letter of the then Prime Minister. And also misinterpretation of Article 106 of the Constitution and Supreme Court ruling has been used to justify illegal governance. The most popular party and also the oldest party of the country, the Awami League, was banned by an ordinance, not by law. And the Election Commission has suspended the Awami League's registration under government's directive, but there is no provision to the Election Commission. They can suspend, whether they can cancel or they can keep the registration not suspended. They have done that illegally. Religious extremism has risen tremendously with the patronage of the government, and more than 300 militant suspects have been granted bail despite of serious charges. Everybody knows media censorship was last 54 years history. There are a little bit always there was, but it has crossed all the records. 184 journalists' accreditation card is revoked. 296 journalists implicated with fabricated murder cases, and 14 journalists have been arrested on false cases, especially murder cases. And media houses are facing vandalism and shutdown. Civil rights, if I see that the Human Rights Commission was dissolved last year, November, and the commission hasn't been formed so far. The educational life, more than 200,000 students are disturbed because of they cannot go to attend their classes or go to the exam, or they cannot get the registration, or they cannot get their certificates because of they are related to Awami League politics. And if they go to the institute, they are attacked by the mob, or they have handed over to the law enforcement authority. In addition, more than 1,000 professionals, including about 800 lawyers, are being harassed in fabricated cases. As you see, the 350 plus factories have been closed within last 1 year, resulting in the job loss of about 120,000. And 90% of those workers were women. Corruption was always there, like all other countries, but it has gone its highest level. Dr. Yunus is reportedly expanding his wealth and business empire using to cover governance to facilitate the personal gain. 666 crore, which is about 55 million US dollar, imposed on Gramin Kullan, that was a fine, was waived. They got tax exemption for next 5 years, that is until 2029 for Gramin Bank. And the government's ownership of Gramin Bank significantly reduced to 25 to 10%. Approval granted for digital wallet for Gramin Telecom. Approval of also a manpower export license and establishment of a university was given. And Grameen Starling is a partnership between Grameen and Starling. All those organizations headed by or founder Dr. was the founder, Dr. Yunus was the founder. This year in February 12th, the Human Rights Commission published a report regarding violation and abuses of human rights in July, August. I met personally with them in Geneva and showed them the report. And even they have mentioned the report has not been edited according with the United Nations editorial standard. They mentioned in their book. When we show them the methodology has limitation and weakness and defect in validation process as well, and biased information without proper sources. So we have few recommendations from this seminar. First of all, we call for full restoration of civil, political, and religious rights and the protection of fundamental freedoms. The judiciary must be independent and free from political interference to ensure equal justice for all. Next is all reports of killing, detention, torture, and violence against women, children, minorities, and political opponents must be investigated fairly and transparently. Every victim deserves justice. As I said, freedom of press, we strongly condemned censorship and attacks on journalists. We call for an immediate end of intimidation, imprisonment, and censorship, and demand full freedom of expression and protection for all journalists. The need for united action against extremism, promoting inclusive governance, human rights, and regional cooperation to ensure lasting peace and stability in Bangladesh and the broader South Asian region. What we need urgently is that an inclusive, free, fair, participatory, and transparent national election under a neutral and credible caretaker government, ensuring the participation of political parties and restoring public confidence in democratic institutions. Thank you. I sincerely thank the speakers, the moderator, and all members of Global Center for Democratic Governance for organizing this virtual event. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Professor, for your valuable opening remarks. Our next speaker is a highly respected journalist known for her insightful international reporting. It's my distinct pleasure to welcome Charlotte Jacquima, editor at Schweizer Radio and Fernsehen Switzerland. Charlotte, we are eager to hear your unique perspective on this critical topic.
Hi, everybody, and thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. And I think in order that you understand me, I probably have to give you a little bit of insight why I'm sitting here. You know, this is out of personal concern. I'm very honest about this. I was working in Dhaka more than 20 years ago for the Daily Star for like half a year. And I met so many wonderful journalists back then, wonderful people, I mean, as a whole. And some of these people have become my best friends, you know, in the last 20 years. So this is a personal concern I'm having. And that's why, frankly, I'm here. Because I know Farzana Rupa and Shakil Ahmed, two of the imprisoned journalists, unlawfully imprisoned journalists. I know them personally. I have known their kids forever. I have known their families forever. And when back in September 24, I heard about their arrest, I was shocked. And I thought, well, this must be a mistake, which will be, you know, be cleared soon. So Shakil and Rupa and their daughter, minor daughter, tried to travel to France. They had all papers, they had all visas. There was nothing illegal about their departure from Dhaka, but they feared for their lives and they wanted to leave. And upon the airport in Dhaka, they got arrested, unlawfully arrested. And ever since they have been detained. Now this case is also very troubling because both parents are gone. You know, there's no food on the table anymore. If both incomes are gone, then the kids, the family is without funds whatsoever. So this was the start of my personal concern, and I looked into this. I looked into the the landscape which it had changed in the first weeks of the Yunus regime, and I only got really aware what had happened when I went to Dhaka myself in November 24, and spent like 10 days there and talked to many of my friends journalists who were hiding. Like I couldn't speak to Farzana Rupa or Shakil Ahmed. Well, I did over the phone because we made like a secret phone call, somehow secret, not really secret, but I could talk to them over the phone when they talked to their daughter. But I only got aware how severe and how bad the situation is when I was in Dhaka in November 24 and spoke to people, to journalist friends who were hiding because they were accused of murder, of fabricated murder cases. Their careers shattered, no income anymore of that one parent. And there is like a half a dozen of my colleagues, they are still hiding, And again, in November 24, I thought, well, this will be just a temporary phase, that will all be cleared. It's not going to be, they're going to get bail out of prison. At one point they will see that these are all mistakes and not real murder cases. But really talking to my hiding journalist friends, I realized, oh no, this is much more severe. This is not going to go away anytime soon. And I was shattered. I left Dhaka and I thought, oh my goodness, what is gonna happen to all my friends? And just to give you a bit of more background on the numbers, we heard already a few numbers. I want to give you some more because I think it's important to realize the extent of all this crackdown on the media, on freedom of the press. And I take the numbers from Justice Makers Bangladesh in France, an organization who has been around for quite some time, who is tracking all numbers, all human rights violations, not only in the media sector, but also in the media sector. And the numbers speak for themselves. Between August 2024 and July 2025, at least 878 journalists were targeted under the interim government. And this is a staggering increase of around 230% to the prior year. And during the same period, 195 criminal cases were filed against journalists. And this is an increase of 558% compared to the previous year. Now, to put this into perspective, Mahfoud Sanam, the editor of the Daily Star, my friend and former boss, if you want to, back in the days, he compared it to the density of murder cases. Like he wrote in one of his pieces that there is no country in the world with a higher density of journalists being accused of murder than in Bangladesh. And this itself is simply insane, right? I mean, these journalists have not been targeted because they killed anybody. Nobody killed anybody. They are simply targeted because they're journalists and because they're secular journalists. These are the most senior journalists in the country, the best if you want to, the best known ones also. They lost everything. They lost careers, they lost income. Their lives are shattered, They can't leave the country because they would be arrested on these false murder cases. So they can only hide. And they've been hiding for more than a year now. And you can imagine how this is, to be hiding with having no income. And some of them are it's just a very, very dire, and many of them are in very desperate situations, really. I can't put it other ways. Not only my best friends, Rupa and Shakil, but also many others I know. So we talked already about around 170 journalists who were stripped of their accreditation, denying them access to official proceedings. So they can't really work anymore if you don't have access anymore to, the branches of government. How do you want to report about what the government is doing? You can't. So that basically means you're out of business. And between August 2024 and July 2025, we had about 500 journalists facing harassment, 266, again, accused in murder cases, and at least 3 of them were killed already on duty. And, I have seen some of these murder cases with my friends because I write the documents. And it's also incredibly bizarre to see that these murder cases happened sometimes on the same day, in different places at the same time. So it's even just logistically impossible to have killed these people. So that fact, should at least grant people bail when you go in front of High Court. But no bail has been given any time, or bail has been given, but then, the branch, this chamber who can deny the bail again, did that, of course. So people stay in prison. No bails have been given to this state, to these unlawfully detained journalists. From August 2024 to March 2025, we also have at least 400 attacks, harassments against journalists, And particularly troubling is that female journalists are very much under pressure. Like, I have seen videos with young female journalists, who want to go out and report on things out in the street. They're harassed, their phones are taken away, their cameras are being shattered. So for young journalists in my profession, it has become really hard to work in the streets of the country because they are constantly facing harassment. They are constantly facing attacks from usually young men in the streets. And again, I want to highlight again the Fasana Rupa, because she has been the only female journalist, I'm sorry, being arrested for so long, imprisoned for so long, under 7 false and fabricated murder cases by the interim government. And although she is physically severely ill, the government has neither released her on bail nor ensured her proper medical treatment. And just this last week, Rupa has been transferred to another prison, like she has been in the same prison where Shakil Ahmed, her husband, has been kept, like Kashimpur Central Prison, a prison where you could say the conditions are kind of, they're not okay, they're terrible, but at least there is, some stuff there's some stuff in place, But now she has been transferred to another prison at the outskirts of Dhaka. I don't know whether I pronounce this correctly, Munchingani, something like that. I'm sorry if I pronounce it not rightly. So she has been transferred there without that the lawyers knew, without that the family knew. They don't know where she is. We have no idea where Rupa is right now, how she is, whether she gets any kind of care. So this is, also just this transfer, is completely illegal. It's unlawful. It's violating all basic human rights, because basic human rights you also have if you are in a jail. And she was denied access to lawyers. The lawyers really can't speak to her. All has to be done through her kids, which are increasingly under pressure too, because this has been ongoing for just way too long. This is just really. Fasana Rupa is just, it seems like, the Yunus regime wants to punish this one woman because she's a woman, B, she's a secular, journalist, she's an outspoken journalist, and it seems like she's the symbol, they want to punish her to show all the other female journalists, don't do what Fasana Rupa has been doing. Just shut up and be quiet, and therefore you can be safe. But it looks like they want to do an example on her. So the whole thing about this incarcerated journalist is even more troubling, because Yunus himself gave an interview a year ago in the Daily Star. It was in November. I think it was on November 24th, 2024. And he admitted in that interview that the cases against the journalist were filed hastily, too fast, no proper investigation, and that they will look into this. They will go into these cases and go look into these cases one by one. Well, guess what happened? Nothing, of course. There has been no investigation into these cases. There has been no proof to this day, no evidence to this day that any of these murders had happened the way they claim. So this is all this is a violation of human rights. Every single aspect of all these cases against these journalists are violations of human rights. And I always point this out when I talk to people or when I write about, for the fact that we have a Peace Nobel Prize person, sitting on that chair, presiding over that government is outrageous, right? He should be, he should be the person number one in Bangladesh upholding human rights, but he's doing the contrary, So, what happened to the media sector under Yunus is terrible. And ever since I've come to the country, I haven't seen the media in such a bad shape. It was always difficult. Let's be honest. It was always difficult to be a journalist in Bangladesh. It was never easy. There were always threats. There was always attacks. But this amount of attacks, this extent of attacks, killing, murder, claiming that you're a murderer just because you're a journalist, not because you have done anything wrong, but because you're a journalist. And you might have been speaking out for a secular Bangladesh. Of course, Rupa and Shakil and my other friends there are standing for a secular Bangladesh. They don't want to live under Sharia law. And that's the reason why they're imprisoned, not because they have killed anybody. So again, to sum this up, the conditions in prison are terrible. There's no due process. There's no access to, lawyers. The families don't know really what's going on. They don't get adequate care in the prisons. And for Rupa being a single, the only female journalist being imprisoned is even more troubling. And having said that again, the fact that in that family with Fasana, Rupa and Shakil Ahmed, both parents are in prison. So the family is without any means whatsoever at this point of time, and is now for 14 months. So I'm calling for, why am I even engaged in this topic, press freedom? Because I believe that if you want to be a democracy, you have to have a fourth pillar. And I wrote that already in my piece in the Dhaka Tribune about a year ago. Every democracy has three branches. We know these branches, right? But besides the three branches of government, you also need an independent media sector, which is a fourth pillar of democracy. And without a fourth pillar, it's by definition not a democracy. And I honestly don't care if Bangladesh doesn't want to be a democracy anymore. If Bangladesh wants to be living under Sharia law, fine with me. It's, I don't care, but I want people to vote on that. I want, and I think you should have a free media, like going along in this process and commenting on this and telling people, what this all means. And by Yunus oppressing this fourth pillar, like attacking this fourth pillar, this media sector, so much how he has been doing over the last more than a year now, is not only troubling, it's a violation of the Bangladeshi constitution, how we see it today. The Bangladeshi constitution protects journalists right now, still protects freedom of the press, protects freedom of speech. Well, this can be changed, of course, but it hasn't been changed so far. So there's no legal basis for killing journalists, for attacking journalists, for putting them into prison, for locking them away just to silence them, because the only goal is, of course, to silence these secular voices, these liberal voices. They don't want to hear these voices. That's why they lock them away. That's why they fabricated murder cases against them. So all I'm doing today is calling for the release of all these journalists, to drop all these cases of murder or these fabricated murder cases, and just let them go home to their families, that they can kind of maybe start somehow of a normal life again, which will be very, very hard and maybe even impossible, But this is, if not this day, when would we call for that? This is the right day to call for this. And I really, really hope that the West is putting up pressure. I've been kind of disappointed about the West. I've been disappointed about my own country not speaking up more. I've been disappointed about the US not speaking out more. In the UK, we have seen kind of some actions being taken. There are some other embassies who are engaged. I want to mention the French embassy, for example, who has been very, very helpful, very speaking out about this all. Some other embassies, but a lot of embassies are also a lot of diplomats are just silent. And don't ask me why. I don't understand it. It's outrageous what's happening. But I want to conclude my speech with this remark that there's just hope for the better in the next few weeks and the new year.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for those critical insights. Moving forward, I am pleased to invite our next distinguished speakers, Lord Raminder Singh Ranger, member of the House of Lords, UK. Lord Ranger, we sincerely appreciate your taking the time to share your insights with us.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's a sad day for Bangladesh. It was really progressing very well, and we were really looking at the a tiger economy being emerging from the rebel. But unfortunately, what we saw was a foreign sponsored coup in Bangladesh. It wasn't a change of regime brought about by the people of Bangladesh. It was, in fact, brought about by the deep state actors who excited the people and then implanted a leader upon them. So, therefore, it is not a normal transition of power when a government falls and then election take place and then another leader takes place, get elected, and that's how the democracy works. But unfortunately, what happened in Bangladesh was a coup led by deep state. So therefore, you have to understand that how situation works. So therefore, your future looks a little bit bleak from where I sit because it's the foreign powers who are now dictating which way the Bangladesh will go. The Bangladesh has no independence whatsoever because when you join hand with superpower, you are doomed from the start. I want to give example of two countries which were born in 1947. One was Pakistan, where I was born, and I was expelled for not being a Muslim. And in 1947, India was also became a secular democratic country where equality for all was enshrined in the constitution, including women. On the other hand, Pakistan turned out to be Islamic State, where people were promoted not on the basis of their merit, but only on the basis of their religion. And you can see which way India has gone and which way Pakistan has gone. They also decided to have relationship with superpower, who supplied them arms, and Pakistan started punching well above its weight even though they never won the war, but they started every war because they thought they had the latest technology, advanced weapons. They had the support of superpower America, including Great Britain. During the War of Liberation of 1947, Seventh Fleet, along with British fleet, were going to attack India if Suez Canal was not closed and the Russian had not come for the help of India. At that time, it is a miracle that Bangladesh got liberated, and they should really worship every Indian leader and the soldier who saved them from the genocide. They were facing genocide, humiliation, and destruction of their race. So anyway, so you have to copy what you want to be. If you want to copy Japan, you want to copy Canada, Switzerland, United States, then you have to have a secular democratic constitution and you have to have a free independent press because the press underpins democracy. Without press questioning the wrongdoings of leaders, you have no democracy because in that where the press is vibrant, independent, judiciary is independent, that countries can progress. So therefore, you can imagine in India, I don't know the year, but Mrs. Gandhi declared emergency, suspended all the rights and everything. But then the next election, she she faced a huge defeat. That is democracy, because that's where people can change the leaders without bloodshed. So what happening in Bangladesh is we are going back to the stone ages where people are marching with sticks in their hand, beating up Hindus, beating up Christians, and destroying their temple. That is not civilization, and that is not religion either. Religion job is to unite and make people more tolerant. If religion is helping to generate hatred, then those people are not going to go far because there's a lot more to life than religion. So therefore, I will request through your panel that you have to make sure that Bangladesh doesn't return to a Sharia law, because when if the Sharia law come, then it has to then it'll be just very dreadful, because first of all, you can imagine women will face the full brunt of that law. I am a single parent child. If those who know my history, my father was against the partition of India. He was assassinated by fanatic who could not understand a country free from rivalry. So he said, if you create a country based on hatred, how will you remove that? Therefore, we need to make sure. My mother was educated. She was with 8 children, and in the end, she became the proudest Indian mother because 5 of her sons were in the Indian Armed Forces, and they also fought in the 71 war, training Mukti Bahini. So, women empowerment is a prerequisite for civil and progressive society. Women are the architects of children. What they do not experience themselves, they cannot impart into their children. So here you are, fatherless man who became a refugee at the age of 2 months, started life in a refugee camp. Because my mother instilled the right values, she worked as teacher. I ended up getting 8 Queen's Award and a seat in the parliament. My mother not only saved 8 lives, but she turned them into assets. So therefore, those people do not give equality to women. They are doomed from the start because they'll have one income, more children, as compared to their competitor with 2 income, less children. So there you are. You know you don't have to be brain surgeon to know. So fathers are too busy trying to make livelihood. They do not have a time to look after children. So the mothers are the the one who take care of children at day and night. They bear them, and therefore it is very important that Sharia law does not belong to the modern and progressive world when we are all cured. If religion had the power, then Bangladesh would still be part of Pakistan. The only those same Muslim inflicted misery to their fellow Muslims. So it wasn't Hindus who were killing the Bengali Muslim. So therefore, you have to understand it is not just because religion is not going to make you a decent human being if you don't have decent values in your system. So therefore, we should really, the country should treat every citizen as equal. No country can progress while systematically discriminating against any section of its population based on religion or gender. Pakistan suffered a massive, massive brain drain in 1947 when all the Hindus and Sikhs left. And then what is left behind? Who are they competing with each other? Now I am a Sikh. I have competed in India with Muslim, with Christian, with Jews, with you name it. It did not do me harm. It made me a better human being. If they were eliminated everybody and made me, a king without opposition. And today you just have to see each and every blue chip company is run by who? Indians, because they are product of a secular and democratic country where they're taught to use merit, not religion, to devalue your fellow citizen. People who use religion to devalue their fellow citizens have no merit or qualities. So they end up in religion. Okay, let's use religion to surge ahead. Let's use religion to kill somebody. Use religion to loot somebody. That is not going to take a short-term gain for some and long-term losses for the nation. So therefore, I'm telling you from my personal experience, the Bangladesh cannot progress until it has a secular constitution, continue with a secular constitution and free judiciary and free press, because these are the pillar on which a nation can progress. Otherwise, you need to find oil or you need to find Mecca Sharif from where you can generate lots of money. If you want to compete with Saudi Arabia and you are a Bangladeshi, then you must make sure that you all have the same stuff which you can attract people to your country. You have no oil. Bangladesh is in a very peculiar geographical location where it suffers every year through monsoon and flooding and everything. Therefore, it has to learn from Dubai. Dubai has become the hub of business. People go to Dubai from every race, every religion, because the Sheikh has provided a haven in desert. And finally, I want to say one thing. We are all blessed with sight, but not everybody is blessed with vision. It is through vision I came to this country. No father, no elite education, no family wealth, no school boy as an immigrant to rise to sit with the good and the great of United Kingdom shows that I did not use religion, I did not use race, I used my merit. How far can you use with your religion? If we want to live in harmony with each other, we don't have to die to see the heaven. The heaven will be on earth if we just use that policy, living in peaceful coexistence. So I think we need to have leaders with vision like Sheikh of Dubai. That Sheikh of Dubai, to me, is a great leader who has made something out of nothing. And we have everything, and we are turning it to nothing. So, ladies and gentlemen, copy what you want to be. If you want to see hands chopped up, if you want to people be stoned to death, if you want women to be put on head to toe, then you are not going anywhere. So that's my appeal to you. Just restore your democracy and do not have any relationship with the superpower. They do not like you. They only want you to be used and abused. Look what happened to Pakistan. They used Pakistan for all the fights against Taliban, and then in the end they left Pakistan high and dry. Do you want to be used? There are no friends except yourself. You have to stand up on your own 2 feet. You have to close the door when you invite a guest in your house or guest into your body. Your body is restless. So superpower, shut the door and just become an independent state. Live within your means. Do not even take loan from these big countries which come with a lot of things. Today you are very close to China. What China has done to the Muslim is appalling. Look, India is giving equality to Muslim. We have president, primary, general, the Air Force chief, judges, foreign minister, home minister. You can't because India's film industry depends on the Muslim because they are very creative, very positive force. So therefore, India will be a poor country without anyone. My father used to use a proverb: India's diversity is like the color of a rainbow. Its charm will diminish if one is removed. He pleaded with Jinnah that India will be secular, democratic country, one person, one vote. Together we'll make our destiny. Don't fall for divide and rule and divide and run policy. If we will never see peace in the subcontinent. And he was killed. Now 78 years later, look at that. The same thing again, same hatred, and Pakistan never had a stable government till today. So, ladies and gentlemen, be careful. God has given you intelligence, use it, and try to be a country worthy of your next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lord Ranger, for your important contribution. Our next speaker is Michael Rubin, Senior Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, USA. Mr. Rubin, your extensive research is highly regarded, and we welcome your analysis on the way forward.
Thank you very much. Look, I used to work, as you know, in the Defense Department 20 some odd years ago. And when working in the Defense Department of the US government, they have a saying that the bottom line should be put up front. And so let me speak in that way. There are three possibilities I see right now with regard to Muhammad Yunus. Either Muhammad Yunus is an Islamist, or Muhammad Yunus is a useful idiot on behalf of Jamaat-e-Islami, or Muhammad Yunus is so consumed with ego and personal grievance. He's willing to promote himself and his grievances and his animosities over the good of the country. When history is written about this period in Bangladeshi history, I do not think that Muhammad Yunus will reflect well his legacy. He has himself ruined, and in doing so, he has the fates and the deaths of hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people on his conscience. Now, I'm a historian by training, which means I get paid to predict the past. And when I look at the events in Bangladesh since 2024, I see two models that apply to Muhammad Yunus and to what we have seen transpire in Bangladesh. The first is what we saw with Ayatollah Khomeini in 1978, in the months before the February 1979 Islamic Revolution. It's hard to believe now, but Ayatollah Khomeini was once embraced by liberals and progressives in society as one of their own. And when he made himself available, especially during his short tenure in France, before returning to the to Iran to declare the Islamic Republic, he told journalists from across the United States and Europe and the West more broadly what they wanted to hear. So, for example, on November 7th, 1978, he said in an interview with the Associated Press, and I quote, "Personal desire, age, and my health do not allow me to personally have a role in running the country after the fall of the current system." And then he told United Press International, "I have repeatedly said that neither my desire nor my age nor my position allow me to govern." He said that I do not want to have the power of government in my hands. I am not interested in personal power. That he said to the Guardian newspaper of the United Kingdom. And speaking to an Austrian television reporter, he said, "I don't want to be the leader of the Islamic Republic. I don't want to have the government or the power in my hands. I only guide people in selecting the system." Now, of course, we all know what happened. And when Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran, what he started to say was very, very different from what he had promised before. So in a meeting with Iranian students and educators in Qom on March 13th, 1979, he said, "Don't listen to those who speak of democracy. They are all against Islam. They want to take the nation away from its mission. We will break all the poison pens of those who speak of nationalism, democracy, and such things." Speaking at the Faiziya school in Qom, the madrasa, he said the group that are due to its oppression to Islam is opposing us. With the same fist that we have destroyed the regime, we will destroy that group as well. Pay attention to your statements. Repent from your writings. I am warning you that you still have time to repent. And then he said, also in Qom, the intellectuals, the writers, those who have information and thoughts, you see some of them take their pens and in the name of democracy, they write whatever they want and they cause disagreements. This group of so-called intellectuals has to correct themselves. Whatever we are suffering is from this group of intellectuals and judges. What we are suffering is because of them. And he goes on and swears vengeance. So clearly, there is a parallel to the soft words which we've heard from Muhammad Yunus and what he's actually putting into action in Bangladesh. Now, that's Ayatollah Khomeini, but there's also Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Now, in July of 2016, there was a so-called coup in Turkey. And I say so-called because it seems to have had a lot in common with the Reichstag fire in Germany back in the 1930s. Erdogan himself called this coup a gift from God. Now, one of the things that's quite interesting and why I bring this up as a model, we now know, I mean, the coup in July 2016 in Turkey was very, very strange, simply because Turkey was no stranger to coups. And for those of you who have been there, and I used to go to Turkey quite a bit, I would appear on Turkish television quite a bit. There were any number of television stations, but there was only one satellite upload link, which they all shared. And in every single coup, that's what would be taken. But in 2016, they went after a single TV studio, but not the others, not the upload stations. Likewise, at the time, there were two major bridges across the Bosphorus. They closed one, but not the other. There was a lot of discussion in Turkey that this coup, which again, Recep Tayyip Erdogan called a gift from God, because it justified his crackdown. There was a lot of evidence that perhaps those who were accused of participating weren't actually the ones who participated. Some of them may have, but the conspiracies which were put out and for which other responses weren't allowed to be broadcast, questions weren't allowed to be asked, ultimately fell by the wayside when people started doing forensic evidence, forensic accounting. So, for example, one of the big grievances were that the so-called coup leaders, these followers of Fethullah Gulen, a homegrown theologian in Anatolia, that they had fired in the crowds in the streets. But then it turned out that many of those who were wounded by ammunition, which wasn't available to anyone except those in Recep Tayyip Erdogan's special units, and that it wasn't Fethullah Gulen. Now, make no mistake, I don't think Fethullah Gulen at the time was a Democrat, and of course he's since passed away. He was an Islamist, and one of the problems with Islamism is that they want to impose, and the difference between being a Muslim and being an Islamist is a Muslim is someone who takes the religion to their heart. They embrace it without compulsion. But an Islamist is someone who doesn't hesitate to impose their vision on someone else. Now, there's a joke they tell in Turkey today about an academic says something wrong, makes the wrong tweet, and he finds himself sentenced to 20 years in prison. And on his first day in prison, he has 20 years. What's he going to do? He's an intellectual. He's an academic. So he goes to the prison library, and he asks the prison librarian. He comes in with a list of books, and he asks whether he could borrow any of these books from the prison library. And the prison librarian looks over his list and apologizes profusely. Says, "I am so sorry. We don't have any of these books. We only have the authors." And unfortunately, that seems also to be where Bangladesh is heading, with terms of an accusation exaggerated against the Awami League. But it really, what we see Muhammad Yunus leading, either intentionally or as a useful idiot, is a fundamental transformation of Bangladeshi society that's directed not simply against the Awami League, and let's face it, Sheikh Hasina's sometimes dictatorial tendencies, but it is directed against a whole movement, a whole philosophy, a whole reading of history. It wants to fundamentally reorient the notion of what led to Bangladesh's independence in 1971, and frankly, in reality, if not in formality, reverse that independence which Bangladesh had won against the war criminals who perpetrated the genocide in Bangladesh at that time. Now, one of the other issues that frustrates me is in recent history, in recent years, we've had 2 Nobel Peace Laureates who have tried to use the Peace Prize as a cover for mass slaughter. One was Abiy Ahmed in Ethiopia, and what he did in Tigray has been nothing short of shameful. Now, I've never met Abiy Ahmed, but I've met many other heads of states in Africa especially, who have known him personally. And what they say is when you are a head of state, you have one way in which you talk to your people, and you have another way in which you interact with other heads of state. And it's seldom the same way, and that's understandable for anyone who's been in government. What they complain about with Abiy Ahmed is that he has become so consumed with hatred and his own propaganda and his own spin that he will try to use the same spin against other heads of state that he says with regard to his own people. And it frustrated many African leaders because they saw Abiy Ahmed as wholly responsible for, if I can be so blunt, the genocide which occurred in Tigray. It was his overreaction, it was his own ideology, and it was his own arrogance and disrespect for the fact that people deserve not only freedom of religion and ethnic rights and ethnic expression, but that they also simply had a right to disagree. Now, what Abiy Ahmed and his fellow travelers would argue is that the Ethiopian constitution had problems, especially with regard to ethnic federalism in Ethiopia's case. And so Abiy Ahmed had no choice but to run roughshod over the constitution. The problem here, of course, is that there are mechanisms in the Ethiopian constitution and Ethiopian law to amend that constitution. Now, when it comes to Bangladesh, Muhammad Yunus won a Nobel Prize, and let's face it, the Nobel Prize, a lot of it is random, whereas most Nobel Prizes in everything but peace are based upon a lifetime of accomplishment. The Nobel Peace Prize is different because it's selected by 5 Norwegian politicians, and it's based on aspiration. This is why, for example, Barack Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize based solely on his rhetoric. And that has applied to others as well. Now, when it comes to Muhammad Yunus, he won the Peace Prize for the Grameen Bank. And perhaps one of the sources of his bitterness is that that's shown a spotlight on the Grameen Bank, which then led to very substantive questions with regard to corruption. And it's that, as we've already heard, it's those questions which Muhammad Yunus doesn't want to be asked. But what we do need to recognize is just because you have a Nobel Prize bestowed by 5 Europeans, that should never be a green light for slaughter. Quite honestly, when we look at what Abiy Ahmed and Muhammad Yunus have done, I think that the most peaceful thing the Norwegian Peace Committee could do in Parliament is simply to dissolve the Nobel Prize, because it has been going so many people who will use it to justify and to justify slaughter and immunize themselves from the consequences of their action. Looking at the issue objectively rather than subjectively, it's hard not to conclude that Muhammad Yunus should hang for his crimes. It may seem harsh to say, but I'm not a diplomat, and I believe that if you're going to say something, you should say it directly. At the very least, Muhammad Yunus should face justice and accountability for the hundreds of people who have been slaughtered and imprisoned unjustly and tortured because of his ego and his policies and his inability and unwillingness to uphold the law. Now, I do also need to say one other unfortunate aspect of this situation. We can't ignore the fact of who is actually trying to boost Muhammad Yunus and this illusion which he has that he is justified. Look, if Muhammad Yunus had democratic legitimacy, and if the Islamist parties like Jamaat-e-Islami were as popular as their supporters say they are, then you wouldn't need to ban the Awami League. The fact that you're banning the Awami League is an indication that you know that you have no democratic legitimacy whatsoever in Jamaat-e-Islami and among the even more radical followers who are now rallying around Muhammad Yunus. But one of the things that I regret as an American is the corruption I see in the United States as well. We can't ignore that some failed U.S. diplomats who didn't make ambassador are now seeking to make a quick dollar on the side by acting illegally as unregistered foreign agents on behalf of Muhammad Yunus and Jamaat-e-Islami. Let me be perfectly blunt. I speak where my analysis leads. I work at a nonprofit that does not take any foreign money, nor do I. And so I'm speaking solely from the sake of analysis. But there are some people who, and we see this from some former American diplomats and so forth, they will try to throw feces at the wall to see what sticks. And when they are accusing other people of supporting the Awami League, not on principle, but because they are allegedly on the take, what they are really engaged in is projection of their own motivations. And the fact is that it is an embarrassment to the entire State Department and to the U.S. Foreign Service when anyone would try to profit from their position in that way. It's also telling if they do so, having never made ambassador, that's a sign that they failed many times around. But this isn't just a problem we've had in the past with the U.S. Embassy in Dhaka. This is a problem we've had with the U.S. Embassy in Ankara, the U.S. Embassy in Doha, the U.S. Embassy in the past in Riyadh as well. It's very, very unfortunate that too many Americans are willing to take a golden parachute based on their previous government service. Now, the last point I would make is policy prescriptive. It's one thing to complain about what we see right now, but how should we actually address this, at least in the United States, moving forward? Now, quite recently, I believe it was on December 3rd, Secretary of State Marco Rubio tweeted in the context of the repression of Christians in Nigeria that the United States would now officially sanction and ban from entering the United States anyone who had any sort of participation or responsibility for the repression of Christians, not only in Nigeria, but anywhere they may be. Now, Marco Rubio may have spoken about Christians based on the audience to which he was speaking, but when it comes to the repression of Christians in Turkey, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, there's absolutely no reason why this policy shouldn't also apply to the quote-unquote Field Marshal Asim Munir in Islamabad or to Muhammad Yunus in Bangladesh. Under no circumstances, if the United States and members of both parties are serious about human rights and defense of religious freedom, should Muhammad Yunus ever step foot again in the United States. And I know he has some family members here, and perhaps he has some financial resources here. But the fact of the matter is that those days, according to Marco Rubio's policy that he inaugurated on December 3rd, should be over. And every Bangladeshi should ask every American diplomat if they apply to Muhammad Yunus, and if not, why not? But with that, let me turn the floor back over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rubin. Your analysis provides essential context for our discussion. To close today's session, I now invite Mohammad Ghulam Kibriya Talukdar, Executive Director of the Global Center for Democratic Governance, to deliver the word of thanks. Mr. Talukdar, the skin is yours.
Thank you so much. Am I audible?
Yes, carry on.
Thank you. Dear distinguished guests, speakers, colleagues, partners, and participants, on behalf of the Global Center for Democratic Governance, GCDC, and media partner Global Bangla News, I extend my heartfelt thanks to everyone who joined our virtual conference on the topic Bangladesh in Crisis, Human Rights, Justice, and the Future of Democracy. Your engagement, insights, and dedication made this gathering an inspiring space for dialogue, reflection, and collective vision. The thoughtful discussions and critical perspectives shared throughout the session reaffirmed our shared commitment to justice, democratic renewal, and inclusive governance in Bangladesh. I'm deeply grateful to our panelists, moderators, and organizing team for their tireless efforts in making this conference possible. Most importantly, thank you to all the participants who contributed their voices and ideas to this virtual conversation. We extend our sincere gratitude to all the media partners whose efforts made the GCDC virtual conference a resounding success. As we move forward, GCDC remains committed to fostering informed analysis and constructive dialogue on Bangladesh's democratic future. Together, we can help shape a more just and accountable society. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Talukdar. And with that, we officially conclude today's virtual seminar. My heartfelt thanks to all our distinguished speakers, participants, and guests who joined us from around the world. Your insights and commitment are essential to raising global awareness and advancing justice and democracy in Bangladesh. On this World Human Rights Day, let us all renew our commitment to these fundamental principles. Thank you all for being with us today.